Hey guys, Technicalism here with a short little tutorial on a short little bass, very stabby one. Um, so yeah, I've been dead recently. What's happened? Well, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably not surprising to you, but it's just university. Not only is it just university, which is already hard enough trying to make content while you're doing university when it's not, especially when you're not actually a YouTuber in the sense that it's not your job. But on top of that, this is university during the pandemic, which has been one of the most stressful times of my life. Usually when something like this happens, it's like, well, I'm gonna have to do this every week, so surely by a few weeks in, I'll get into the swing of things, and it won't be great, but I'll get through it. But I mean, technically, I have gotten through it, but it's not even been like that because I'm not even kidding. Obviously, I started back in September. Literally this week is the first week since I started uni that I have not felt like I am absolutely panicking that something's going to happen that's going to lead to me failing or something like that. There's been projects I haven't been able to hand in because I haven't been able to use the software and all that. Just generally, it's been really difficult trying to get any help. And I've been stressing out constantly because of it, and so it's been really hard for me to get any music in at all. And you might have seen that I've started doing some streams, so I've done 2 streams working on a color bass track. Aside from that, I've not really done much in terms of music um, since Avian Omens, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, the reason why I'm making this video now is because I just felt like this is the first time I've had a breather, and well, tomorrow I get another lesson, then I'll probably find out another reason why I can't take a breather and get back to my hobbies, because actually there's even more to worry about. Now I'm just going to stop talking about that here because I know it's not really your problem, but I'm just letting you know. I really do care about this channel and I would love to upload here constantly, but the main thing is just the fact that this is something that I cannot do full time. Um, it's made it so that it's very difficult for me because I specifically created this channel separate from my original channel to be where I put quality content and all that. You know, I want it to be where all the best parts of what I make are. And because of that, it means that if I want to make a video, I have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to put aside this many hours for it and work on it for this many days or whatever. I feel like I kind of have to be able to do that, and that isn't the case technically for this video, but that's just because I feel like I need to upload something. And of course, when university is constantly making me worry, it's really difficult to well work on this music and make videos on it, and yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. I'll get to the actual bass now. So yes, Vital. Now, if you haven't heard of this synth, you probably have by now. But basically, right now, it's the hot new synth on the block. It's the next phase plant kind of thing. And I'm not gonna lie, this isn't gonna be a super in-depth tutorial about Vital, because when I say this is the first bass I've made with Vital, I mean it. This is the first thing I've made with Vital at all. I'm not gonna lie, I did not expect to be doing a tutorial on this at all. But I literally just opened it up, and the first thing I made, I was actually really happy with when I was just messing around. Like, I didn't look up any tutorials, I just kind of, you know, messed around a bit, and I'm like, oh, actually, I like that. So yeah, I'm showing it off. This is a pretty simple bass, so the video should be pretty short. But this is what it sounds like. So since I didn't really expect this to be a particularly like important bass or anything, I just took one of the was it factory. I thought it was a global one. Whatever, one of the preset wave shapes, Creepy Solar. I just took that and put it in here and made it so this LFO modulated the wavetable position. And I was going to do more, but I decided before I did that, since I knew I wanted to make a stabby sound, I thought before I do any of that, I wanted to see how the filter sounds like. And so I got a filter. And I already thought, oh, actually, that sounds kind of good. By the way, this is actually being. Let me turn off all the effects too. So actually, yeah, it starts out like, and then filter gets added. So as soon as I had that, I was like, well, that pluck is like that stab is really like short to the point where you can hardly make out a tune. But if I compress that enough, it might actually be coherent enough. And that's basically what I did. I got a compressor, I got a chorus, and I think did I have a flanger on? Yeah, I had a flanger on. And then I got this. By the way, I'm pretty sure this is basically an OTT. It's not exactly the same because obviously it's not made by the same people. It's made by Vital. It's not Exfer, but I would say that this might be the best thing I've seen, job I've seen any synth do of trying to replicate OTT. Definitely OTT is still better, but this is pretty good. I tried distortion, but it didn't sound very nice. I also tried delay, and that didn't sound very nice to be honest. I mean, if I was going on my way to sound like Eliminate, then maybe, but nah, I'm just trying to make a bass here, and I feel like that kind of took away from the strength of it. So yeah, that's actually all the patch itself is. From there, the disperser. Well, technically, before I added that, I had the OTT, so let's have that first. And then then I had the disperser. Now, if you don't know what disperser is, this is a effect plugin that comes as part of PhasePlan, and it's what's called an all-pass filter. What that essentially means is it's very easy to look at this and think it works like an EQ, which is what I did at first, and that's why I never used this, because I thought this was literally just a low shelf that they put a fancy name on at first. So I was like, yeah, okay, screw that. But it's not that at all. What this does is the horizontal axis does represent frequency, but the vertical axis actually represents phase and not volume. So it's not boosting the low end. What it's doing for the low end is it's causing a slight delay to when it plays, so that the high end comes in first. And what this does is it makes your basses sound really kind of like they splash when they hit, which is really cool. But on top of that, it gets even cooler, because I actually didn't realize until recently what the true difference between a phaser and a flanger is. And that is, I knew that the idea was that both of them works by having two sounds. One of them plays slightly later than the other one, like a millisecond later or something, and then you get that effect. But I didn't know what the difference between the two of them was. I looked it up before, but I feel like I only half understood it every time I tried to read it. And now that I know what an all-pass filter is, I get it. Because what the difference is that a flanger has the higher pitch stuff, because a flanger just has the delay. Whereas a phaser is a bit more specific, and to make it so there isn't so much of a focus on the high end, it instead uses an all-pass filter, so it has a longer delay on the lower frequencies than it does on the higher ones. So once you realize that a phaser is basically just an all-pass version of your signal mixed with the original version of your signal, then that means you could realize, hey, if I just have an all-pass filter, I can do what a phaser does. I can set the mix of the filter to 50%, or in this case 75%, and I've essentially created a phaser, which is what I've done here. Now, you may be saying, well, that's cool, but why don't I just use a phaser? And now, I must admit, I don't have a very smart answer for this. I don't know how these things work behind the scenes, but quite simply, disperser just sounds better, in my opinion, in most cases, just having a disperser on at half mix or something like that, because I'm not sure, again, why, but phasers tend to mess more with the pitch of your sound, whereas phasing with disperser, has the same kind of watery effect, but it doesn't really mess up your pitch at all. The only thing it might do is if your sound is really chunky, it's really got a hit to it, then the disperser might weaken that hit, which actually does technically weaken this hit a little bit because of the interference that's created by mixing the two signals, but not by so much that I feel like it's worth getting rid of the disperser. That's also why it's on 75% mix. One, because I like the kind of bounciness that's added to it by having the low end delayed, so I wanted to exaggerate it more for the disperser side than the no disperser signal. But also because if I had it at 50%, there'd be a bit more strong interference, which would take away from the hardness of the hit every time. Then I added a pitch shifter. So, this is just a common thing that I do every time now, all the time whenever I'm trying to make a bass more interesting. So much to the point that I've made sure this is my default pitch shifter patch right here. Every time I open pitch shifter, it's already like this. Minimum grain size, although you can definitely try maximum if minimum doesn't sound good. Half mix and -12 semitones. So what this means is that there is a copy of the sound that through granular synthesis, although it's still the same length, it's been pitched downwards so that it is an octave lower in pitch. And the grain size being low means that it favors not having any overlap to have gaps in between each sample with the granular synthesis over having the samples overlap. Also on higher grain size settings, it tends to kind of get weird with rhythm, which usually makes it bad, but depending on how you use it, it can also make your rhythm really interesting. But yeah, and we're mixing this with the mix is at half because we want to mix this with the original signal. So yeah, it almost kind of sounds like a blip, if you know what I mean, like a kind of almost like a quick arpeggio. Because I'm pretty sure the lower one comes in before the higher one. So yeah, it's very subtle though. Then it gets interesting. Then we have this patcher. And this is what the second half is over here. You might notice I've got two automation clips. The bottom automation clip, which I forgot to talk about, is automating the frequency on the LFO that's controlling the whole bass. So it's usually at 1/8 in triplets. But you can see it changing as the song went. And you also would have heard the difference what happened when we added this patcher too. At this point, we turn the patcher on, as opposed to we now have. And what's going on is we have a frequency shifter shifting it down 750 Hz, which is quite a lot, and an EQ that's cutting 750 Hz because there's a weird kind of artifact you get often with frequency shifters, especially if you pitch up, where around the number that you put in for the frequency shifting, there'll be like an exaggerated sine wave sound that can sound really annoying, so try and get that out if you can. And then I've really harshly distorted this, just because if I don't, it's not bad, but it's a little bit kind of, weak. As well as that, there's another reason why I've done this, and that is because I must admit I wasn't very thorough this time, since this is a bass I made quite quickly, although I'm still pretty happy with it. But I know that, although I don't understand fully how it works, Frequency Shifter has some interesting and strange properties that are something to do with anti-aliasing when you pitch shift up or down. Well, down in this case. Basically, what happens if you have, say, a 300 Hz sine wave and you pitch it down 400 Hz? It can't go to minus 100 Hz. So some form of anti-aliasing goes on to do with like Nyquist or whatever, or sorry, not anti-aliasing. Yeah, basically it's kind of similar to when the frequency of your sound goes over the sample rate, and the frequency of the sound actually starts coming down because the computer can't accurately sample that sound fast enough because it's oscillating too quickly, because it only samples 43,000 times a second. So if it's oscillating more than 22,000 times a second, then it can't keep up. Why half of that? Half of that because it needs to measure it going up and measure it going down for it to measure a full oscillation. So yeah, I know that's kind of weird to think about, but think of it this way. Say you had a sound that was a square wave that was going at, I don't know, 1,000 Hz. Now, say you also had a computer that somehow had a sample rate really low and it was 500 Hz. So that means it checks to see where the sound wave is 500 times every second, when the square wave moves up and down 1,000 times every second. That would mean that every time it checks to see like what amplitude the square wave is at, it would be in the same place, because it would never see it go down, because it would always like they would be kind of in sync, and it would only ever measure it when the square wave was pointing up. So even if the sound you input wasn't just a straight line, what would come out would just be a straight line with all the volume right, like this line just going straight to the top of the oscilloscope and never moving down. And yeah, so it's kind of weird to think about, but that's how it can mess with pitch, because if it starts to miss oscillations, and if pitch is basically the amount of times a sound oscillates per second, you can see how trying to increase pitch can actually reduce it by making it miss oscillations. Anyway, so sorry. When you try and reduce the frequency of sounds using frequency shifter below the point they usually should be, something like that starts to happen that I must admit I don't fully understand, where you start getting these really high frequencies coming in. They're very quiet, luckily, so they don't usually mess things up too much, but you'll hear very high frequencies start to come in when you really crunch these down, which is why this sounds more like, if you listen to it before and after, it sounds like when I frequency shift it gets more high pitched, but I'm pitching it down with 750 hertz. Like, that sounds higher pitch, but that doesn't seem to make sense because I pitched it down with 750 hertz. That should make it lower pitch. But yeah, so the reason I'm talking about this is why I'm distorting so hard as well. It's because I mentioned those higher frequencies are extremely quiet usually, which is usually a good thing. But it's also interesting because it means that if you want those higher frequencies to get some more interesting kind of conflict in your sounds and interference, then you can distort the sound really harshly to have the high frequencies become a lot more noticeable and able to kind of fight with the original sound a lot more. And finally, there's a wave shaper here. What is it doing? Nothing. The reason why it's here is to make sure that it never goes into the red. Now, why have I done that? Well, that's because me and my friend Snare may actually be working on a sample pack for the first time. And for this sample pack, we obviously don't want samples where it's peaking. You can, turn up the volume and mess with it later if you want it to kind of be pushed harder. So it'd be better if the samples I gave would be not peaking at all, even if, like, I think it might sound better. Like, if you want it to peak, you could just increase the volume. Anyway, so yeah, as you can guess, this sound is being put into that sample pack as a bass loop. The sample pack should be on Tear Out, which is a genre I've been meaning to try and produce for a long time. Say a lot. I don't know why I said a long time, because I haven't been meaning to produce it for a long time. Since I've heard of it, I'm like, oh, this seems like a cool genre. I should try it. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was a bit of a short video. Also, you may notice still not edited videos. They should be coming, but I'm having way too much goddamn trouble trying to find a free video editor. I keep getting ones and they either don't work or they look like they're not that bad, and then suddenly watermarks appear everywhere and all that, and it's like, ugh. So yeah, I'm hoping that I can get this DaVinci Resolve working for me, but it keeps just running into weird errors every time I try and use it. So yeah, I do plan on trying to make some edited videos in future, but I need an editor first. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me, guys. I am hoping to at some point, hopefully, maybe when the pandemic is over and we're back in university, and maybe I'll feel a bit more stable then. I'm hoping to actually start uploading relatively consistently, like weekly, probably, videos like this. So yeah, I'll see you then, hopefully. Bye.